Hello guys, and welcome back to Strategic Command World War II, World at War with our Allied playthrough. Last episode we had some very disappointing events. In France, the BEF line has been splintered at its strongest point, unfortunately, by a combination of elite German infantry and German tanks. The Maginot is holding great, but I don't think that's going to save France. The French Special Forces has arrived, and we've done some naval movements. Unfortunately, losing the battleship you guys named HMS Bodie McBoatface over here. I intended to try to blockade the Germans here, maybe lure them out. Well, I did that, and I don't know, that might have been a mistake. I got some of them, they got some of me. It's hard to really tell if it was worth it or not, but it's definitely a good learning experience, being that this is my first playthrough, and I hope to have several, at least, more to come. Now, we have a lot more to do this turn. First and foremost, we did encounter an enemy heavy cruiser. Thank God the Canadian destroyer didn't run into this. With the Salmon sub, we dealt a fuck ton of damage to it as it ran into us. We are going to attack it again. And voila, we have sunk it. Hopefully that helps make up for the dead battleship. A little more national morale for us, and theoretically a little less for the Germans, who are still over their cap. Which makes me wonder why there is a cap. We know there was a German ship over here, but it seems to have fled. We don't quite know where it was. Now, one thing we do have to keep in mind, however, is while we're in the war, and I don't know if the Axis is guaranteed to make Vichy or not. They probably very heavily lean towards it if they're not guaranteed to. We do need to reinforce the group over here at Tunis, so we're going to go spend the rest of our points buffing up the Tunisian corps, as the Italians could be marching out of Tripoli any day now. We have absolutely no one down at the Mareth line, and quite frankly, we don't have any opportunity to really put anybody down there, so we're just going to focus on holding what we can. The Brits, however, have mobilized over in Egypt, giving us a free fighter unit, tactical bomber unit, anti-tank unit, artillery unit, and desert reconnaissance. No idea exactly what a desert reconnaissance unit is. Oh, it's a recon unit, that's exactly what it is. And it comes with upgrades. It functions essentially as an infantry unit. It seems to be like an armored variant of a cavalry, if I do say so myself. In regards to the rest of the UK's fleet, we do need to go ahead and reinforce the aircraft on this carrier, as it has suffered some losses. We're going to pull the glorious carrier out of port so it can continue providing some defensive aerial capabilities to try to weaken those Germans, those pesky Germans. Again, Europe has just been going so bad, whereas everything else has been going pretty well. I assume the Italian Navy is still mostly docked, but it's not exactly going to be easy to tell that. We can continue some reconnaissance with our little submarine here. See if we find anything. They'll pass by Syracuse here. We know they probably have a ship right there, so let's avoid that. And sail on up towards here. Oh! Enemy contact outside of the port. A light cruiser we have encountered that has left its port. The French are going to get some more work done for me before they die, I'll tell you that much, by destroying some Italian ships. Now, we don't have a lot of mid-tier options for this Navy. We have 3 battleships, so these battleships are going to have to go to battle. So let's send in, before anything else, let's send the Dunkirk in. We're going to send the Dunkirk in. Alright. This light cruiser seems to have ungodly amounts of resistance to everything we plan on throwing at it for some reason. So we're also going to send in the Provence battleship into the zone of control here. Yep, there's nothing at the port. This is what was at the port. Maybe the French are just really bad. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Let's go ahead and attack with the Provence battleship. Dealt 1 damage, took none. Let's attack with the Dunkirk. Dealt 2 damage, took 1. And now we will try to probably back out of the danger zone here as much as we can. Send in the Paris battleship now. Attack. 2 damage, and we have forced it to retreat back into port. Now we'll retreat with this battleship. We'll retreat somewhat with this battleship, kind of trying to keep them together. We're going to need to form a defensive screen line around this, I do believe. Let's go ahead, sail destroyer to the north side. Let's sail destroyer to the west side. Leave this light cruiser here for defense and sail forward this heavy cruiser into the Ionian Sea to screen the battleships. Hopefully some more Italian ships show up and end up taking the bait. Now, for the Brits, I will go ahead and reinforce the Rupert Force Special Forces that have returned from Finland, and we shall now go look at Africa. So I'm not fully ready, but semi-ready for marching into the Italian holdings here. Again, only semi. So we've marched forward. We've taken a town already. That's a good start. We're now going to march up further, and we have made contact with an enemy garrison unit, which has dealt 1 damage to us, although unfortunately we have killed nothing. Now, we do have a fully up to strength corps down here, which we are going to transport because, again, I don't believe it can operate. You know, I never actually looked. No, it cannot operate. I learned I could check for free. We're going to transport this, get it in a transport, and we're going to want to sail that up north. Let's put it in cruise mode. We could just barely make it all the way up to Mombasa, sail there, and get off, not at Mombasa, but just north of it now that we kind of know where we need to be. Take a step forward, and this South African corps is almost up to the front as well, where it looks like it'll actually be a little better off than the first corps here that we have fighting as is. The Sudanese here can also probably begin marching in. Certainly, they are fairly ready. Fairly. They could use some AA defense and mobility, but at the very least, it's probably worth marching up to this town and taking a look at what we have. Now, the town's max entrenchment to this hill up front is 3. I think for now, we'll focus on just taking refuge in the town and seeing what's to come. This submarine is going to continue down the channel towards Aden, because it might be needed somewhere over here at some point. We just got to make sure there's nothing to run into. It's currently on a patrol. Everything in Egypt has to get ready for the upcoming. Now, I had to leave something in Cairo, but I do kind of wish that I had moved the army forward to start entrenching up there. It's quite a shame that I haven't. It's not the most important town, but I'd rather not lose it. We're certainly not going to be taking Tobruk. I'll tell you that much. At the present, there's certainly no need to sit back any longer for any reason, so I will go ahead and move this army up because it is a pretty good choke point. The corps over here at Cairo can also go ahead and move up. I believe both of these have anti-air upgrades, whatever that's worth. And we're going to have to get ready to get some more of these forces up on the front. We're going to reinforce the desert field artillery. They could come in handy. Reinforce the desert reconnaissance, only by +2. Guess they don't have enough supply. Fighters are more important than bombers. Let's reinforce those first. Then reinforce the bombers, which can actually go all the way due to their supply being better. And reinforce the anti-tank as much as we can. That took pretty much all of my MPPs, but it got them ready for the inevitable Italians that are going to come marching out of Tobruk, I imagine. In an effort to help future research with the Indians, I'm going to go ahead and spend their current money on spying and intelligence to try to make this all a little bit more efficient, pushing us closer to our total research funding, because the Indians are not necessarily needing to get a bunch of units just yet. Strategy-wise, I've been thinking, looking at the situation here, and I feel it's pretty much guaranteed France will fall, as I've been making every wrong decision in this theater. If I could start again, I would have done the exact opposite things. So what I've been thinking of is, we're going to obviously pour everything we can, hopefully make some good decisions involving the USSR as best we can. But my objective right now is probably going to be to defeat the Axis everywhere except Europe. That's the idea. Because assuming, not even assuming, but if the USSR falls, then everything I've been doing is playing pretty well into that. If Afghanistan ends up joining India, we've expanded the front here, and India has a pretty easy front leading right into a fallen Soviet Union. If China continues defeating Japan, then eventually China becomes the USSR, and the UK in Africa can connect into the Middle East and fight from there. That's kind of the idea I have. This is like a final strategy, not a ideal one, mind you. And to that extent, let's look at what we can do with America. So we have 2 ships we can deploy. The Wasp carrier in LA, which already has a carrier at it, actually. Although we can't really send anything forward due to the limitations that were placed on us in the beginning of the game. Unfortunately, we will go ahead instead and simply move the Enterprise down to San Diego. We will then deploy the Wasp in LA where it's supposed to be. We can also go ahead and reinforce the aircraft on the Lexington. And we have a destroyer, the Wainwright, which we can deploy looks like at any of America's ports. Assuming that a mixture of the UK and Canada can cover the Atlantic, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually end up deploying this destroyer to the west, let's say, to help out any naval operations to the west. Let's just deploy it in this crazy area of ports, so it's in a port for right now. The idea I'm having with America right now, based on how well Asia is going, how bad Europe is going, is we're going to do whatever we can to pour MPPs into the USSR. The USSR is going to be our main front against Germany and the European Axis. The American naval fleet, I believe, will be necessary for fully wiping out Japan, maybe not pushing them out of China, but fully wiping them out. So, I intend to focus everything that I can from America on Japan. I intend to leave any Australians and anything over here until Japan is wiped out, and simply focus on trying to hold off the Germans. That's probably my plan going forward. I believe this is going to be pretty good. With such great focus, I believe we can wipe out Japan before anybody else early on in the war. And if that happens, that means everyone in the world can go focus on Europe. If everyone in the world can focus on Europe, I believe we're pretty much guaranteed to win. Looking at American research, now that we can do more research, we're going to need more research. When shit hits the fan, you know, we're vastly behind on land technology, specifically. So we're going to go ahead and research infantry weapons, because infantry weapons is like, it's everything. It's so important. So we're going to go ahead and research that. With my plan for America in mind, we are going to have to leave the East Coast a little bit undefended, to say the least, which could be dangerous. So I will make up for that. You know, we have 2 armies here and a corps. These could be very handy in the Pacific against the Japanese and wiping them out. This is 500 all by itself, 650 total with these land units worth of MPPs. So what I'll do, America can recruit quite a hefty bit of garrison. So we are going to go ahead and we are going to recruit the first American garrison just to kind of get started on that, so that we can start moving these units elsewhere. And we're going to do this by moving instead of operationally, just to kind of save points. These little spots will bring us to the other side of the map, specifically to Butte and Beaver. So where exactly is that? Butte. This is Beaver. And this is Butte. Okay, so we, for the most part, would like to get to Beaver, but, you know, we'll go wherever we can. It's probably not too important to min-max this too much anyway, but yeah, we will probably just head down the East Coast. So we're going to send the Corps on the capital south, move the New York 2nd Army to the capital, and move the Boston Army to New York. Eventually, I'll get a garrison. I'll just start filling things in one by one. Not everything, mind you, just like the really important stuff here. And then the rest of it will head west. The important stuff, you know? Spend a little bit on garrisons, gain a lot in armies and corps. Now let's look at the Soviets. The engineers here have completed what they were building in terms of fortifications. Rather than heading up north, because this line is going to be very, very fragile to say the least, the engineers are going to move down here. And ideally, we're going to get another fortification placed here to kind of hold the line, which, seeing what the Germans are capable of, I have a good feeling that line will fall. This corps, which was operationally moved here, will move up into the forest here, where it will take defense positions and start entrenching. Since we have successfully kept the Finns, as the event has made clear to me, out of the war, due to the success of our operation in Finland, these garrisons up here are not nearly as necessary as they were, meaning we can use them elsewhere, which can free up entire forces to help us, especially from the rear. For example, over here at Archangels. So if my plan to get Finland to join the UK works out in time, then we don't have to worry about the Germans ever getting up here theoretically, because if they do, they'll open a front with Finland, who can hopefully give them a little bit of a fight with some UK funding. As a result, I'm going to operate the army here at Archangelsk, and we're going to bring it down towards the front. Namely, we're going to place it, you know what, actually that's a good idea. That's probably better than where I was going to put it. Let's put it right in these new fortifications. I was going to put it in as fars, but this works out as well. Put it right in these fortifications where we'll hopefully be able to hold the line. Quite frankly, we could do something more like an army over here at Orsha, because this is a little bit of a weak spot. Yeah, I think I'm going to do something like that. We're going to take this corps off of Orsha. We're going to move it into this other defensive position in the forest instead. we're going to move the army at Smolensk forward to Orsha. And then we're going to take the HQ and move that back to Smolensk. Because if they get this far, they've broken through our lines and we have to retreat anyway. Looking over at the east, I'm going to take the 5th tank group here, spend 25 MPPs to operationally move them across the country. And we are going to put them in the north, where I feel like they'll do well with the potential very rapidly shifting battle lines over here. We'll put them right here to fill in this line for right now, where they will entrench. But I expect them and their participation in this affair to be very mobile. Simultaneously, we're also going to move the Mongolian Cavalry Corps, 16 MPPs, all the way over here to the southern part, so I'm splitting up these more mobile units, leaving the weaker one in the south. For now, we're just going to deploy this a little bit behind the lines at this mine, which is an important MPP location, where I believe we might need some mobility in our defense, right in front of this garrison guarding a national morale objective. As for the Vladivostok Corps, we will go ahead and operate this as well. This can actually have elite reinforcements, funny enough. For now, we're just going to go ahead and operate the Vladivostok Corps, and we are going to assign them a new duty. This duty is going to be up here. I want to place them in this little village here, as this village is a little intersection that allows you to bypass the marshes as well as the forest here. So they're going to be moved there and set up some fortifications, probably get their elite unit as well. I wonder if any of these others can have something like that. No, they don't quite have enough XP. It's mainly the Vladivostok Corps. There's only one thing left over here in the east, and that's this Special Forces. Naturally, we will operate them as well, head them west. I believe I'm going to put the Special Forces in the south. Yeah, somewhere more mobile where some offensive power could probably come in handy. I'm going to put them right here, which is actually a marsh, but it's behind a marsh and like 2 rivers. So it's a pretty good blocking force in case the enemies try to push through here. And it can be moved pretty easily should the situation require it. So now this is all defenseless, which a player might want to take advantage of as Japan, but a player would also probably be maybe a little stupid to do that because it would immediately mobilize the USSR, and you know, China's not going well for Japan right now anyway. This brings me to our final front. The Chinese front, my favorite front, because it's the one where we are just ahistorically defying all the odds. It's fucking beautiful. Now, the Japanese did go on a heavy offensive in the center again, and once again almost wiped out an entire army. Absolutely terrifying stuff. I would have thought all my success in the south would have convinced them, hey, maybe we should redeploy. But no, they just reinforced what they could here, and then immediately went on the offensive. All the carrier-based and otherwise based air and whatever support that they could give, also firing at us in the mountains, weirdly enough, and once again almost wiped out an army. So we're in the same position we were in before. We are definitely going to bring this fighter group back up to max. It suffered heavy losses dealing with everything that it dealt with in this prior turn. We do have an anti-air back here now, so with the exception of apparently right here, it looks like we can guard a lot of what's around. I don't know why it's not showing that we can. Maybe this is movement. We should be covering everything within a range. In fact, we can probably look at its stats and see here. Yeah, it looks like their intercept ranges are a lot different. Anti-air only appears to have an intercept range of like 1. So you basically need it next to whatever the hell you want it to protect. That's logical. That's logical. I think I can utilize that nonetheless. We'd want it on Cheng Chao then, which means we would be able to move this core for something else. But what? Well, starting from the north anyway, we're making progress here. We've really pushed this army back. It's probably recovering. Our main army that we can reinforce, which we probably will, is in a heck of a position. We're going to go ahead and actually take the new core that we brought up here from Xi'an last turn. We're going to move it up to go look at the enemy infantry, which looks like they have actually reinforced. Would you look at that? We're also going to move this corps up out of their entrenchments. We're going to move both of them forward to start establishing new entrenchments. We're not going to go on the offensive here because there's no point. It just won't work. We're going to reinforce this army, however. This one, unfortunately, cannot be reinforced because it's just in such low supply. It also cannot really be maneuvered into any better position here. However, if we do want to continue making progress here, we're going to need the 2 armies to cooperate. We're going to need to, like, roll them north and probably roll the corps south. Or, you know, just around in general. So we're going to move him up behind the corps. So the armies will be able to kind of shift in as we progress next. Now, we've been in this situation before with this army. We know we have to get him out of there. We know we need an army in this spot. This spot is like the most dangerous spot to sit in all of China. So we're going to rely on the strategy we did before. We're going to move him one tile to the south. We're then going to reinforce him all the way up to the max. That's like almost all of our MPP, but it's worth it. He's now reinforced up to max. His readiness is halfway. His morale is extremely fucking low. Now, this is going to be a very probably aggressive turn for the northern part, because I'm going to try to make the AI feel fear here. I want to make them take damage. I want to make this hard on them. So the enemy here, this army, the 37th Army, is not entrenched. It's ready, but it's not entrenched. And then this one is, it's doing better off. But we want to try to do some pretty good damage here. So we're going to take the 12th Army on our side, and we're going to attack. We dealt 2 damage. We lost 2 damage. Okay, I think that works out pretty well. Now, we're going to take this core sitting in the mountain, and even though it's showing that our odds are not the greatest, we're going to attack again. Oh my god. Well, we killed at least one of them, right? At least one, and suffered none, despite it saying we would suffer 2, and pushed him back onto the river here. And we want to further stress their front line and make them feel like they have to scramble as much as we can. So we're going to take this core out of its mountainous entrenchments and move it forward into the next mountainous entrenchment. There's a core sitting here all by itself. It probably is not going to do that great against us. They have to reinforce this unit. It's not going to be that great by itself. They have a garrison here, you know, they're not going to leave Peking alone, otherwise we're going to swarm them from the north. So I'm hoping to outstretch them with these tactics, keeping the front line as strong as possible. If we lose this tile, this marsh, it's not actually very important, but while pushing them back. So with that, we have further pushed the lines for the time being up north, and I am in fact quite happy with that. But we're not done yet. Like I said, we want to make them feel like they need to retreat, and right now I believe we have the numbers to do such a thing. So since I need to move this anti-air into Chengchao to get the air defense that I want anyway, we're going to play even more aggressively. We're going to take the L core, whatever that stands for, and move that forward into these zones of control here. We're going to push right forward. We can see they do have a core in the rear, but we're getting very close to their air, and hopefully that scares them. I'm really hoping that that scares them. But not to make that primary target number 1, we're also going to go ahead and take this core and move it south 1, so that this army here has a couple things to think about instead of just one. We're not going to attack because the enemies are still greatly entrenched, but now we can move the anti-air onto Chengchao so it can provide its air defense to this line here, which desperately needs a little more air defense. The engineers have finished their fortification here, which would be good for a fall back from this position, which is always in flux. We're going to move it forward 1 as well now, and we're going to begin to fortify, which apparently we can do on the same turn. I don't remember being able to do that. Maybe because there's still action points left. Where do we want this facing? Ideally, we want this one to be 3-directional, not 2-directional. So we're going to add 3 sides to this one in this exact pattern. 1 facing northeast in case this marsh falls, 1 facing southeast in case this field falls, and 1 facing south in case this field falls, as we've just pushed up into them. A extra fortification could help deal with any failures in my aggressive strategy here, but I'm hoping the spread thin Japanese will very much fear my actions here. Now, the enemy here at Haikou seems to be staying put, unfortunately. We're going to have to leave someone down here to keep an eye on him, which is not optimal, but it's what we have. Down south, we want to get units back up to strength. We don't have a whole lot of points, but we can get a lot of them back up to strength. We're going to prioritize the 3rd Corps here. The 3rd Corps needs the strength the most. Yeah. We can also go on the offensive here. Still. Okay. Well then, tell you what. Actually, yeah. No, we want to press our advantage. So, the 1st Corps is going to reinforce along with the 5th Corps here. The rest of these guys are going to go on the move, including this army right here, which is not currently on a railroad, but it can get on one. I don't know if it'll need to. We're going to move it up to Guilin so it can start moving towards the opponents. And as for this Corps, probably want to send that this way to assist down by Amoy. So we're going to send this over to Canton. The Corps sitting on Canton is going to attack yet again. No losses on either side, but I swear to God, the morale and readiness of the enemy corps here is going down. So that seems, in fact, pretty good. Now, to press our advantage here, they're trying to use the Korean army as a defensive front, but it's weak. It's weak, and that's going to be its downfall, I think. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to attack again with the... Let's start with the third corps, actually, even though it's weaker. We dealt 1, we lost 2. That's fine. We are now going to attack with the whatever this corps is number. We dealt 1, we lost none, and the enemy actually retreated. Now, we don't want to march into a death trap here or anything, so I won't be as aggressive here as I have been, despite this very tasty-looking HQ being right here, because this Central Expedition Army, it's level 3 experience. This could have an elite reinforcement. I think it did. It probably lost it in an attack last turn. We're going to back the third corps up to Hengyang, where it should be able to recover. I don't think they'll be able to march anybody over here for the time being. Everyone else on the front is still like full strength, which is good. And this army is in the rear getting ready, just getting ready. We have this whole southern force that's going to be pushing up on them from the south and hopefully turning this entire front around. Now, with all of that said and done, we are out of things to do for the turn. We've spent all our MPPs, done all our movements, and we're rapidly approaching our time limit. I have a feeling that this is going to be a very eventful end turn phase, so I will go ahead and cut this episode here, and next time we are going to watch France get beat up, watch bad things happen, and hopefully watch good things happen in China. China is my morale booster, yes. So I hope you guys are enjoying the series, and I hope you are learning with me. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.